Tonight, a deadly shooting at a memorial to victims of hate. A gunman opens fire at the Holocaust Museum in Washington. The suspect described as a white supremacist and Holocaust denier. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, are bargain basement gas prices a thing of the past? Pump prices are rising rapidly again. How high will they go? From a boat dealer in Florida to a jewelry salesman in New York, we follow the recession's ripple effects around the world in our continuing series, Financial Family Tree. And schools paying kids to make good grades. Does it work? The report card is in.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. The Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. says its mission is to teach visitors, there have been 30 million so far, about the dangers of unchecked hatred. Today, a graphic example bursts right through the museum's front door. An elderly man armed with a rifle opened fire and killed a museum guard before he was shot and wounded by other guards. The suspect has a long history of anti-Semitism. We have two reports tonight, Justice correspondent Bob Orr. But first, here is investigative correspondent Cheryl Atkinson.
At 10 minutes before 1 o'clock, police say an 88-year-old man carrying what they call a long rifle entered the U.S. National Holocaust Memorial Museum, prepared to do violence.
We were scared, just shaking, just trying to see what was going on.
People started yelling, hit the floor, hit the floor. So my wife and two grandsons and I hit the floor.
The suspect, James Whitaker Von Brunn, allegedly stepped inside the main visitor's entrance with his rifle visible. Police say before reaching the metal detectors, he immediately raised his weapon and started shooting. He shot one security guard. Two other guards returned fire, wounding the gunman. Eyewitnesses tell CBS News that at some point, the activity spilled outside through the front door of the museum. You can see the man they describe as the shooter on the ground in these images captured from a cell phone across the street. The shooter's red car is parked just feet away.
It was boom, 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 very fast.
I heard 5 sharp noises and just like faint screaming in the background.
The gunman and guard were rushed to the same hospital. The guard, 39-year-old Stephen Tyrone Johns, had worked at the museum for 6 years. He arrived at the hospital in grave condition and later died.
Our hearts really go out to the family right now and to the guard who was shot, and we appreciate all the support we're getting.
The suspect, Von Brunn, remains in critical condition with a head wound. He posted this photo of himself on his white supremacist website.
At this point, this appears to be a lone gunman. He appears to be acting alone.
Von Brunn has a long history of espousing anti-Semitism and once served time in prison. But the FBI says today's action came without warning.
We had no prior information. There was no prior threats of this nature about this incident.
Many inside the museum at the time were left shaken.
The museum itself is an emotional experience, and we just had come off of that, and then this to happen is like, wow.
This is the first major violent incident at the Holocaust Museum since it opened 16 years ago. Police evacuated the building and closed it for the day. They now say it'll be closed tomorrow in honor of the fallen security guard. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News.
This is Bob Orr in Washington, where federal investigators are scouring the troubled history of 88-year-old shooting suspect James Von Brunn, an anti-Semite with a lifelong grievance against the government, who found allies on white supremacist websites. On his own site, holywesternempire.org, Von Brunn promotes his internet book, Kill the Best Gentiles, a new hard-hitting expose of the Jew conspiracy to destroy the white gene pool. Chapters are titled The Holocaust Hoax, The Negro, and the Aryan Force. In writing fondly about Nazis, Von Brunn claims Hitler, as American boobs are beginning to learn, was not all wrong. Von Brunn, who claims to be a genius and a U.S. Navy World War II veteran, spent 6 years in federal prison. He was convicted for breaking into Federal Reserve headquarters in Washington in 1981, armed with a revolver, sawed-off shotgun, and hunting knife. Von Brunn said he wanted to kidnap Fed Chairman Paul Volcker for failing to curb rising interest rates. He later ranted, "Remember the Federal Reserve Act gave Jews control of America's money." Police and federal agents today converged on Von Brunn's apartment complex in Annapolis, Maryland, looking for potential evidence. But he's moved around in white supremacist circles, living for a while in Hayden, Idaho, the same community that was home to the founder of the Aryan Nation. The Holocaust Museum shootings came just 11 days after another hate crime, the murder of Kansas abortion doctor George Tiller. The suspect, Scott Roeder, is described as an anti-abortion rights radical. The violence underscores a troubling trend. In the past 8 years, the number of hate groups in America has exploded, up more than 50%, from 602 in 2000 to 926 last year. Now, police say Von Brunn apparently acted alone in carrying out the attack today at the Holocaust Museum. And police say they know of no other targets, but they're keenly aware that the hatred he spewed is at the very base of a wider, ongoing threat. Katie?
And Bob, what role has the internet in general played in the proliferation of these radical groups?
A huge role. The internet has been called the Wild West. It's a place with no rules. You can go there to validate the craziest idea. Police say it's the #1 driver for hate groups, for extremist groups on both sides, and even for terrorist organizations.
But having said that, Bob, these sites must give law enforcement some pretty powerful leads.
Well, they do. Of course, I'd like to close down some sites. The First Amendment stops that, but police do monitor the sites. And in the case of terrorists, intelligence officers use it regularly to track what terrorists are up to and the kinds of things that are being talked about in open forum. So it does have some value.
Anything else, Bob, you can tell us about the suspect, for example, what he did for a living?
Apparently a lot of things. As far as we can tell, he grew up in Missouri. He moved around, lived around white supremacist enclaves. At one time was a real estate agent, didn't do very well, blamed the government for rising interest rates. In recent years, he's been a writer and an artist. You can buy paintings on the internet. Katie?
All right, Bob, we're in Washington. Bob, thanks very much. And this footnote, because of the shooting, the Holocaust Museum has postponed tonight's premiere of a play written about Holocaust victim Anne Frank and lynching victim Emmett Till. Members of Congress and Attorney General Eric Holder were planning to attend. Turning to business news now, a deal is done to bring Chrysler out of bankruptcy. The Italian carmaker Fiat officially took control of Chrysler today. It will soon reopen factories that were closed after the company filed for Chapter 11 6 weeks ago. Meanwhile, fuel prices for cars of every make and model continue to rise. Crude oil hit a new high for the year today, $71.33 a barrel, and gasoline is averaging $2.63 a gallon now. That is the highest price since last fall, though still about $1.50 cheaper than its all-time high last summer. Dean Reynolds has more.
In Michigan, there's a painful connection between the lengthening lines at the employment office and the rising price of gasoline. Creighton Miller is an unemployed factory worker from Battle Creek.
I'm probably spending anywhere from 30 to 50 bucks a week extra in gas so that, I can go ahead and look for a job.
With Michigan facing the nation's highest unemployment rate at 12.9% and second highest price for gasoline at almost $2.88 a gallon, it's not the best time for Miller to be looking for work as a truck driver.
I guess they have to grin and bear it.
Nationally, since December, the average price of a gallon of regular gas has risen $1, a 62% increase, the largest over a 6-month period in history. And while gas prices go up every spring as refineries switch to more expensive summer blends and consumption increases because of vacation driving, demand right now is flat. So why are prices rising? For one thing, the dollar is weak, and that means everything it buys, such as oil, costs more. And investors are driving up the price further by buying more oil as they see signs of an economic recovery and the potential for increasing demand. Of course, the rising price could stall the very recovery they're anticipating, so not everyone's jumping in.
I'm a little concerned with prices heading back up over $2.50. You may see a lot of the people scrambling back to shore.
Still, as worrying as the price climb has been, it's nowhere near last summer's spike above $4. This week, the Department of Energy predicted gasoline prices will peak next month, averaging close to $2.70 a gallon nationwide. They would love it that low in Battle Creek, home of the Bombers, and $2.94 a gallon gas, and where the effects of the rising prices are obvious. Attendance, even at $5 a ticket, is down.
I've seen more people biking to the games. I've seen an increase in people who pedal up to our ticket office and park their bikes.
The club's biggest expense is gasoline, and this morning the squad left for Thunder Bay, Ontario, a costly 831 miles away. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Chicago.
Now the latest on Air France Flight 447. A French nuclear submarine arrived today at the crash zone off the coast of Brazil. The sub is using sonar to search for the plane's flight recorders, which could be more than 2 miles down in the Atlantic. Divers have recovered 41 bodies so far. 228 people were killed when the plane went down last week on a flight from Rio de Janeiro to Paris. Also overseas, a car bomb blew up today in a crowded outdoor food market in southern Iraq. At least 28 people were killed. It was the deadliest attack in that part of Iraq in nearly 6 years. Survivors blame the Iraqi government for lax security. Officials suspect al-Qaeda is behind the attack, aimed at destabilizing the country. Coming up next, right here on the CBS Evening News, it started with slow boat sales in Florida. We'll trace the recession's impact around the world and back in our continuing series, Financial Family Tree. Now to the recession. The Federal Reserve said today it sees signs around the country that it's beginning to ease. In our continuing series, Financial Family Tree, we've tracked the ripple effects of the recession on people and businesses from Florida all the way across the country to California, across the ocean to China, and tonight to New York, where our national correspondent Jim Axelrod picks up the story.
When we first met Greg Altieri, a sales exec at Far East Gem, a jewelry manufacturer in New York, he was attending the industry's biggest trade show in Las Vegas at the worst possible time.
This is as bad as the industry can possibly be.
But just being there made Greg better off than many of his competitors. Attendance was down 40%.
That's everything for Brooklyn.
Jerry Natkin was among the missing.
Why didn't you go to Vegas? I don't have an appetite to look at things I can't buy.
Jerry owns William Barthman in Lower Manhattan, a watch store which caters to the Wall Street crowd.
Suggested retail on this is $450.
But even they're not buying like the good old days. So Jerry's brought in a new inventory line, stocking $450 watches for customers who used to spend 10 times that. Easy.
Rather than lose this customer, we bought this product line in.
Even with the new line, store revenue was down about $1 million. Natkin cut salaries across the board by 10% and cut his workforce, going from 24 employees to 18. Which meant accountant Ed Middleton was out of a job.
So life's changed.
Life's changed a lot.
Working freelance, Ed's now making half of what Jerry paid him. Gone, the $60 a month spent at Starbucks, the $85 a month gym membership, and the $100 a month on his favorite hobby, cooking.
Well, 6 months ago, a luxury item would have been an aged steak and a really good bottle of wine. Now, luxury items are pizza, waffles, and ice cream.
Ed thought his hobby might make a good next career, but then he priced a single class at the Institute of Culinary Education in Manhattan, $215.
But with my cut in budget, there was no way I could take it.
Diana Ortiz decided she couldn't afford not to take classes there. She wanted to follow her passion after she lost her job in home equity loans for Wells Fargo.
You weren't passionate about home equities?
It was paying the bills.
Trouble was, Diana didn't know exactly what her passion was. Turns out it was right in front of her, in her kitchen.
What is it about cooking? What does it for you?
Taste, flavor, the textures, the aroma.
To pay for her program, this single mom canceled her vacation plans for this year, saving $2,500, depleted her $15,000 in savings. Call it a new recipe.
Budgeting, 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 and planning.
Outside Des Moines, Iowa, Diana's friend, Roxana White, is following the same recipe after losing her job at Wells Fargo, too.
There are times that, there definitely is anxiety.
So 15 months ago, Roxana started a gift basket company. She used her severance and cashed in her 401k to raise $15,000 in startup costs. She also went from a $35,000 salary to nothing.
I went from a great salary to putting everything that we have into the basket boutique. Jazz it up however you like.
Roxana says the goal now is to turn a profit by January. But in this recession,
I feel that there's only room to grow now. I really feel that way.
the best that even this optimist can do is set her chances, she says, at 50-50. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
And next week, we'll take you from gift baskets in Iowa to a couple who makes rum cakes in the Cayman Islands. And for more about the series, including previous segments, you can go to cbsnews.com and click on Financial Family Tree. And we'll have more news in a moment. President Obama's Middle East envoy, George Mitchell, is on a delicate mission to get Israel and the Palestinians back to the bargaining table. Today, he told Palestinian President Abbas the U.S. still supports establishing a Palestinian state, but even so, there's a major roadblock: Israel's West Bank settlements. Next Sunday, Prime Minister Netanyahu plans a major address to respond to growing U.S. pressure to stop expanding them. From the West Bank tonight, here's Mark Phillips.
Like everything else in the Middle East, there are two opinions on the work going on Israel's West Bank settlements. The Palestinians call this Israeli expansion, another land grab. The Israelis call it natural growth, to accommodate growing families. Whatever it is, President Obama says it has to stop. No more construction, period.
This construction violates previous agreements and undermines efforts to achieve peace.
The settlers are furious.
We are the landlords, and we live here not with anyone's permission. We own the place.
While the settlers have always known that new outposts have been forbidden under various peace plans, and some have been forcefully demolished, successive Israeli governments, they insist, have always had a nod and a wink understanding with the U.S. that building on existing settlements was tolerated. Washington denies any such deal.
You feel betrayed by Washington?
Yeah, there's a feeling of betrayal. We've had 6 decades of American presidents whose orientation was in our direction, and now I think that we're having to wake up.
Barack Obama may not only have changed the rules of the game in these settlements, he may actually have changed the very nature of the relationship between the U.S. and Israel. Previous American presidents have called for a settlement freeze. The fear here is that this one may actually mean it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now faces a stark choice: satisfy his right-wing pro-settlement government coalition or satisfy the White House.
The most important Israeli diplomatic statement is not what's said in the negotiating room. It's what's built on the hillsides. That's the bulldozers and the cranes state Israel's diplomatic position.
And those bulldozers and cranes are still at work. Mark Phillips, CBS News on the West Bank.
And coming up next, reading, writing, and raking it in, where students get paid for getting good grades. Finally tonight, it began here in New York as an experiment to get kids to crack the books by showing them the money. Yes, cold hard cash for getting good grades. But does it work? Here's Randall Pinkston with a report card.
4th grader Roy Rivera couldn't believe it when his teacher told him he would be paid to take tests.
I was hoping she wasn't joking.
And she wasn't joking.
No, she wasn't.
Rivera and 7th grader Brianna Tan are part of an experiment that pays some students for academic achievement. Have you earned any money yet?
I would say close to 50.
$50?
Yeah.
It's called the Spark Program. In New York, 8,000 randomly selected 4th and 7th graders earn for learning. 4th graders can earn up to $25 for scoring well on 10 math and English tests for a maximum of $250. 7th graders can make $50 per test, or up to $500 a year. Similar programs are underway in Chicago and Washington, D.C.
It is getting kids on the right path to do the things that we want them to do.
The controversial privately funded program, the brainchild of Harvard economist Roland Fryer, is drawing high-profile attention.
How has it worked so far? 2 years in New York, how's it gone?
We don't know yet. We haven't evaluated
It's all
the numbers.
theory.
I'm a professor. What do you expect?
formal analysis is due this fall, but the anecdotal evidence is promising. Last year, just 60% of Roy Rivera's third grade class met state math standards. This year, with cash rewards, 84% made the grade. Despite positive preliminary results, critics say the very idea of paying students to study is risky business.
Once you create this expectation in students, how do you unwind it? When do we stop paying them? We are just bribing students to do something that they should do on their own.
But advocates say the 2-year pilot program is intended to teach kids early that hard work pays off.
During that year, kids develop habits. They see what they can do when they apply themselves with more energy and focus, and that carries over.
Habits that educators hope will last a lifetime. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.